I was folding laundry in the living room when I heard my daughter Emma giggling in her bedroom upstairs. It was 2:47 p.m. in the afternoon, and she had been playing alone for about 20 minutes. Nothing unusual about that. She was 4 years old, imaginative, and perfectly content entertaining herself with her stuffed animals and coloring books. But then I heard her say something that made my hands freeze mid-fold. "The hollow man says you are going to be very sad soon, Daddy." Her voice was cheerful, innocent, the way children sound when they are simply repeating words they do not fully understand. I stood there holding one of her tiny pink socks, feeling a cold sensation creep up my spine that I could not explain. The house was suddenly too quiet except for her soft laughter drifting down the stairs. "My name is Daniel, and I am 32 years old. Before I tell you what happened over the following weeks, I want you to know that I have always been a rational person. I work as an accountant, I pay my bills on time, and I do not believe in ghosts or supernatural nonsense. At least, I did not. My daughter Emma had always been creative, always talking to her toys, giving them elaborate backstories and personalities. My wife Rachel and I thought it was adorable. We encouraged her imagination because that is what good parents do, right? So, when Emma first mentioned her new imaginary friend 3 weeks earlier, we did not think much of it. Kids have imaginary friends all the time. It is completely normal. But there was something about the name that bothered me from the start. The Hollow Man. Not Mr. Fluffy or Princess Sparkle or any of the cheerful names you would expect from a 4-year-old. The Hollow Man. When I asked Emma where she got that name, she just shrugged and said he told her that was what he was called. I need to pause here for a moment. If you are enjoying this story so far, I hope you will leave a comment below telling me what you think an imaginary friend really is. Are they just products of a child's mind? Or could they be something else? I am genuinely curious about your thoughts, especially after what I experienced. That afternoon, after hearing Emma's disturbing statement, I walked upstairs to her bedroom. The door was halfway open, and I could see her sitting on the floor surrounded by her stuffed animals. She had arranged them in a circle, and she was sitting in the middle, talking animatedly to the empty space beside her. "Emma, sweetie," I said, pushing the door open wider. "Who were you talking to?" She looked up at me with those big brown eyes and smiled. "The Hollow Man, Daddy. He is sitting right there." She pointed to the empty space next to her. I felt my stomach tighten. "What does the Hollow Man look like, honey?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Emma tilted her head, thinking, "He is very tall. Taller than you, Daddy. And he is thin. Really, really thin. Like he is made of shadows. He does not have a face, but he talks to me anyway. His voice sounds like whispers, lots and lots of whispers all at once." I forced myself to smile. "That sounds like a very interesting friend. What does he talk to you about?" Emma picked up one of her stuffed rabbits and hugged it. "He tells me things. About people. About what is going to happen. He said Mommy is going to cry a lot soon. He said the house is going to feel different, cold. He said you are going to be scared, Daddy." The way she said it, so matter-of-fact and innocent, made my blood run cold. "Emma, did someone tell you to say these things? Did you hear Mommy and Daddy talking about something?" She shook her head. "No, Daddy. The Hollow Man told me. He knows things. He has been here for a very long time. He says he has been waiting." I did not know what to say to that. Part of me wanted to dismiss it as childhood imagination run wild, maybe fueled by a scary movie she accidentally saw, or a story another kid told her at preschool. But another part of me, a deeper, more primal part, felt genuine fear. There was something wrong about this, something off. I knelt down beside her. "Emma, I need you to tell me the truth. Is the Hollow Man real, or are you pretending?" She looked at me with complete sincerity. "He is real, Daddy. He is standing behind you right now." I spun around so fast I nearly lost my balance. Of course, there was nothing there, just the empty doorway and the hallway beyond. When I turned back to Emma, she was giggling. "He thinks it is funny when people get scared," she said. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. "Emma, listen to me. Imaginary friends are fun, but I do not want you saying things that might scare Mommy or Daddy, okay? Can you do that for me?" She nodded slowly, but there was something in her eyes, a knowing look that seemed far too old for a 4-year-old. "Okay, Daddy, but he says you cannot stop what is coming. He says it has already started." I left her room feeling deeply unsettled. Downstairs, I found Rachel in the kitchen preparing dinner. She was humming softly to herself, completely unaware of the conversation I had just had with our daughter. Rachel was 29, a pediatric nurse who worked 3 12-hour shifts a week. She was practical, grounded, and even more skeptical than I was. I hesitated before speaking, wondering if I should even mention it. "Hey, has Emma said anything weird to you lately? About her imaginary friend?" Rachel glanced at me while chopping vegetables. "The Hollow Man?" "Yeah, she mentions him all the time." "Why?" I leaned against the counter. "She just said some strange things, dark things, about us being sad and scared." Rachel frowned. "What do you mean, dark things?" I recounted the conversation, watching her expression shift from mild concern to something more serious. When I finished, she set down her knife and wiped her hands on a towel. "That is strange," she admitted. "But you know how kids are. They pick up on emotional cues we do not even realize we are giving off. Maybe she sensed some stress between us, and her imagination is processing it through this imaginary friend." I wanted to believe that. It made perfect logical sense. "You are probably right," I said, "but the name still bothers me. The Hollow Man. Where would she even get something like that?" Rachel shrugged. "Kids are exposed to all kinds of things. TV, other kids, random conversations they overhear. I would not worry too much about it. If it continues or gets worse, we can talk to her pediatrician about it." I nodded, but I could not shake the feeling of unease that had settled into my bones. That night, after we put Emma to bed, I found myself lying awake, staring at the ceiling. Rachel was already asleep beside me, breathing softly. I kept thinking about what Emma had said. He has been here for a very long time. He has been waiting. Waiting for what? And why did she sound so certain, so serious when she said it? At 2:14 inches the morning, I woke up to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. Small, light footsteps. Emma. I sat up in bed, listening. The footsteps stopped outside our bedroom door. I waited for her to come in, to say she had a nightmare or needed water, but she did not. Instead, I heard her voice, soft and distant. "The Hollow Man wants to show me something, Daddy. He says you need to see it too." My heart was pounding now. I slipped out of bed quietly, careful not to wake Rachel, and opened the bedroom door. Emma was standing in the hallway, her back to me, wearing her pink pajamas with the little flowers on them. She was facing the stairs, completely still. "Emma," I whispered. "What are you doing out of bed?" She did not turn around. "He is downstairs, Daddy. He wants us to come down. He has something important to show us." There was something about her voice, something flat and emotionless, that terrified me. This was not my bubbly, energetic daughter. This was someone else, something else, speaking through her. "Emma, turn around and look at me," I said, more firmly this time. Slowly, she turned. Her eyes were open, but she was not looking at me. She was looking through me, past me, at something I could not see. She was sleepwalking. I had read about this, how you were not supposed to wake sleepwalkers abruptly because it could disorient and frighten them. I approached her carefully and gently took her hand. "Come on, sweetie, let us get you back to bed." She resisted slightly, her gaze still fixed on something behind me. "He says you are not listening, Daddy. He says you need to pay attention, or something bad will happen." Her words sent ice through my veins. "Emma, honey, you are sleepwalking. There is nobody here. Let me take you back to your room." I guided her back to her bedroom, and she went willingly enough, though she kept looking over her shoulder, back toward the stairs. Once I got her tucked back into bed, she seemed to relax, her eyes finally closing. I sat beside her for a long time, watching her sleep, making sure she stayed in bed, but I could not shake the feeling that something was watching me. The room felt wrong, too cold, too dark. Despite the nightlight plugged into the wall, I found myself looking at the corners of the room, at the closet door, at the space under her bed, expecting to see something, though I did not know what. After about 20 minutes, When I was confident Emma was deeply asleep, I stood to leave. That is when I saw it. On the wall opposite her bed, there was a drawing, a crude, childlike drawing done in crayon. I had not noticed it before because it was partially hidden behind her dresser. I walked over to get a closer look, and my breath caught in my throat. The drawing showed a stick figure of a man, tall and impossibly thin, with no face, just a blank oval where the head should be. Next to him were 3 smaller figures, clearly meant to be a family, a man, a woman, and a child. But the strange thing was that the faceless figure had long, spindly arms that stretched out and wrapped around all 3 of them, like he was pulling them close, or trapping them. At the top of the drawing, in uneven letters that Emma must have traced or copied from somewhere, were the words, "The Hollow Man is here." I pulled the drawing off the wall, my hands shaking. When had she drawn this? Why had neither Rachel nor I seen it before? I took the drawing with me and went back to our bedroom. Rachel was still asleep. I wanted to wake her, to show her, but I knew how she would react. She would tell me it was just a drawing, just Emma's imagination, nothing to be worried about. And maybe she was right. Maybe I was overreacting. I slipped the drawing into my nightstand drawer and got back into bed, but I did not sleep for the rest of the night. I just lay there, listening to the house, waiting for something to happen. Nothing did. The house remained quiet and still until morning. The next day was a Saturday. Rachel had the day off, and we had planned a family outing to the park. Emma seemed perfectly normal at breakfast, chattering happily about the swings and slides, showing no memory of her sleepwalking episode. I decided not to mention it to Rachel yet. Maybe it was an isolated incident. Kids sleepwalk sometimes. It does not mean anything is wrong. But as we were getting ready to leave, Emma suddenly stopped in the middle of the living room and looked toward the corner by the window. "The Hollow Man says he is coming with us," she announced cheerfully. Rachel laughed. "Well, tell the Hollow Man he is welcome to join us, but he has to behave himself." She winked at me, clearly not taking it seriously. But I noticed something that made my skin crawl. The corner Emma was looking at seemed darker than it should be, even though morning sunlight was streaming through the window. It was as if there was a shadow there, a dense, concentrated darkness that should not exist. I blinked, and it was gone. Just a normal corner of the room. We went to the park, and for a few hours, everything felt normal again. Emma played on the swings, went down the slide a dozen times, and ran around with other kids. Rachel and I sat on a bench, watching her, holding hands, enjoying the warm afternoon. For a moment, I almost forgot about the Hollow Man and the unsettling things Emma had been saying. But then, as we were getting ready to leave, Emma ran up to me, out of breath and excited. "Daddy, Daddy, the Hollow Man showed me something really cool." I knelt down to her level. "What did he show you, honey?" She pointed toward a cluster of trees at the edge of the park. "He showed me the place where someone died. A long time ago. A little boy. He fell from the tree and broke his neck. The Hollow Man was there when it happened. He saw everything." My blood ran cold. "Emma, where did you hear that? Did someone tell you that story?" She shook her head, still smiling. "No, Daddy. The Hollow Man showed me. He shows me lots of things. Sad things. Scary things. He says he sees everything that happens. He has been watching for a very, very long time." I looked at Rachel, who had gone pale. "Daniel, that is not funny. Why would she say something like that?" I stood up, taking Emma's hand firmly. I did not tell her anything. I have no idea where she got that from. When we got home, I did something I probably should have done earlier. I searched online for any history of deaths at that park. It took about 15 minutes of digging through local news archives and historical records, but I found it. 23 years ago, a 7-year-old boy named Timothy Brennan had indeed fallen from a tree at that park and died from his injuries. The article included a photo of the tree. It was the same cluster of trees Emma had pointed to. I sat back in my chair, feeling like the floor had dropped out from under me. There was no way Emma could have known that. No way. Rachel and I had never discussed it, and I had never heard about it until just now. How could a 4-year-old possibly know about a death that occurred more than 2 decades ago in a park we rarely visited? I showed Rachel the article. She read it in silence, her face growing increasingly pale. This has to be a coincidence, she finally said. Maybe she heard someone talking about it. Maybe there is a memorial or something at the park that mentioned it. I shook my head. There is no memorial. I looked, and who would be talking about a 23-year-old death at a playground? Rachel had no answer for that. That night, we both agreed that we needed to have a serious conversation with Emma about her imaginary friend. We sat her down in the living room after dinner, trying to approach it gently. Emma, sweetie, Rachel began, we want to talk to you about the Hollow Man. Can you tell us more about him? About how you met him? Emma looked between us, sensing the seriousness of the conversation. I did not meet him, Mommy. He has always been here. He was here before we moved into this house. He was here before that, too. He goes lots of places. He follows people sometimes. He likes to watch. I felt a chill run down my spine. What do you mean he follows people? Emma shrugged, swinging her legs on the couch. He watches people who are going to be sad, or scared, or hurt. He says he is drawn to it. He cannot help it. It is what he is. He is empty inside, so he likes to be around feelings, even if they are bad feelings. It makes him feel less hollow. The way she said it, using words and concepts that seemed far beyond her years, was deeply disturbing. Emma, has the Hollow Man ever touched you? Ever hurt you? Rachel asked, her voice tight with concern. Emma shook her head. No, Mommy. He does not touch people. He just watches. And sometimes, he tells me things. He says he has been alone for a very long time, and he is glad I can hear him. Rachel and I exchanged worried glances. This was beyond normal childhood imagination. This was something else entirely. Emma, I need you to understand something, I said carefully. The Hollow Man is not real. He is something your imagination created. He cannot actually tell you things or show you things. Do you understand? Emma's expression changed. For the first time, she looked upset, almost angry. He is real, Daddy. Just because you cannot see him does not mean he is not there. He is real, and he is never going to leave. He told me so. She burst into tears, and Rachel immediately pulled her into her arms, comforting her. I felt terrible for upsetting her, but I also felt a growing sense of dread. This was not normal. This was not okay. That night, after Emma was asleep, Rachel and I had a long discussion. She wanted to take Emma to see a child psychologist, someone who could help her work through whatever was going on in her mind. I agreed, but I also could not shake the feeling that this was not just a psychological issue. Something else was happening, something we could not explain. I kept thinking about the drawing, about Emma knowing about the dead boy at the park, about her sleepwalking, and the things she said. It all felt too real, too specific, to be just imagination. But what else could it be? I was not ready to accept any supernatural explanation. Not yet. At 3:27 inches the morning, I woke up to the sound of whispering, not just one voice, but many voices, all overlapping, all speaking at once. I could not make out any words, just a constant, unsettling susurrus that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding. Rachel was still asleep beside me. The whispering continued, growing slightly louder. It was coming from the hallway. I got out of bed and opened the door. The hallway was dark, illuminated only by the faint glow of Emma's nightlight coming from under her door. The whispering seemed to be coming from her room. I walked down the hallway, each step feeling heavier than the last. When I reached Emma's door, I pressed my ear against it. The whispering was definitely coming from inside, but it was not Emma's voice. It was too deep, too layered, like dozens of voices speaking in unison. I slowly opened the door and looked inside. Emma was sitting up in bed, wide awake, staring at the corner of her room, the same corner that had seemed darker earlier, and this time, there was no mistaking it. There was something there. Not a physical presence, exactly, but a wrongness, a distortion in the air itself, like heat shimmer on asphalt but cold and dark. The temperature in the room had dropped significantly. I could see my breath misting in the air. Emma, I whispered. She did not look at me. He is talking, Daddy. He is saying so many things. He is showing me things. Her voice was distant, entranced. I stepped into the room, my eyes locked on that dark corner. "Emma, come here right now." I tried to sound authoritative, but my voice came out shaky. She finally turned to look at me, and what I saw in her eyes made me freeze. Her pupils were dilated, enormous, almost completely black. "He says you can see him now, Daddy. He says you are finally paying attention. He has been waiting for you to notice him. He has always been here, watching our family. He watched your father before you were born. He watched his father before that. He follows the line. My father." She was talking about my father. "He had died when I was 10 years old, killed in a car accident." A cold, horrible realization began to dawn on me. "What does he know about my father, Emma?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Emma tilted her head, that same too knowing expression on her face. "He was there when it happened, Daddy. He was in the car. He says your father was scared at the end. He says he called out for you and Grandma. He says there was so much blood. The Hollow Man watched it all. He always watches. I felt like I was going to be sick." Emma could not possibly know the details of my father's death. We had never discussed it with her. Never. She was too young to understand that kind of tragedy. But she was describing it with details that only someone who had been there could know, unless she had somehow accessed records or overheard conversations. But that seemed impossible. "Stop it," I said, my voice rising. "Stop saying these things. This is not funny, Emma. This is not a game." But she was not listening to me anymore. Her attention had returned to the corner, to that dark, wrong presence that I could almost but not quite perceive. "He says something is coming, Daddy. Soon. He says the house is going to change. He says Mommy is going to leave, and you are going to be alone, and I am going to be scared, and there is nothing you can do to stop it because it is already happening. It started the day we moved into this house. He has been waiting for us. He chose us." Those words, delivered in my 4-year-old daughter's voice, were the most terrifying thing I had ever heard. I grabbed Emma and pulled her out of bed, away from that corner, and carried her out of the room. She did not resist, but she kept looking back over my shoulder, as if watching something following us. I brought her into our bedroom and woke Rachel up. "We need to leave," I said, my voice urgent. "We need to get out of this house right now." Rachel sat up, confused and groggy. "What? Daniel, what are you talking about? What time is it?" I was already pulling clothes from the dresser, throwing them on the bed. "I cannot explain it right now, but we need to leave. Something is wrong with Emma's room. Something is wrong with this house. We need to go." Rachel looked at Emma, who was sitting quietly on the edge of our bed, and then back at me. She could see the genuine fear in my eyes. "Okay," she said slowly. "Okay, let us calm down and talk about this. What happened?" I told her everything. About the whispering, about the presence in Emma's room, about what Emma had said about my father's death. As I spoke, I watched Rachel's expression shift from concern to disbelief to something approaching fear. "Daniel, you are scaring me," she said when I finished. "What you are describing, it sounds like you are saying there is a ghost or something in Emma's room. You know that is not possible, right? There has to be a rational explanation." I wanted to agree with her. I wanted to believe there was a rational explanation, but I had seen what I had seen, felt what I had felt. "I know how it sounds," I said, "but something is wrong. Can we at least stay somewhere else tonight? Just for one night?" Rachel looked at Emma, who was still sitting quietly, watching us with those 2 dark eyes. "Emma, honey, are you okay?" Rachel asked gently. Emma nodded. "I am okay, Mommy. But Daddy is right. The Hollow Man is getting stronger. He is becoming more real. He says that is what happens when people start to believe in him. When they start to see him, he feeds on fear and attention. The more scared you are, Daddy, the more he can do." Rachel's face went white. "Emma, who taught you to say that?" Emma smiled, but it was not her usual cheerful smile. It was something colder, more knowing. "Nobody taught me, Mommy. The Hollow Man tells me things. He tells me true things. He says you are going to leave us soon. He says you are going to get sick." Rachel stood up abruptly, pulling Emma into her arms. "That is enough. Daniel, I think we need to take Emma to the hospital. This is not normal. Something is seriously wrong. I agreed. We got dressed quickly, and within 15 minutes, we were in the car, driving to the nearest emergency room. Emma sat in her car seat in the back, quiet and docile, occasionally looking out the window as if watching something only she could see. "Is he following us?" I asked, unable to stop myself. Emma nodded. "He goes where we go, Daddy. He has been following our family for a very long time. He cannot leave. He is attached." The emergency room was bright and sterile, the complete opposite of the dark, oppressive atmosphere of our house. They took Emma back immediately when we described her symptoms and behavior. A pediatrician examined her, asked her questions, did some basic tests. She seemed perfectly fine physically. No fever, no signs of illness or injury. They brought in a psychiatric nurse who specialized in children to talk to Emma. After about 2 hours, the nurse came out to speak with us. "Your daughter is physically healthy," she said. "Mentally, she seems to be experiencing some kind of dissociative episode or possibly processing anxiety through this imaginary friend. It is not uncommon for children to create complex fantasy worlds, especially if they are feeling stressed or sensing tension in the home environment." Rachel nodded, looking relieved. "So, there is nothing seriously wrong?" The nurse hesitated. "I would not say nothing is wrong. Her fixation on this imaginary friend and some of the things she is saying are concerning. I would strongly recommend follow-up with a child psychologist. But for tonight, she is safe to go home. Try to maintain a calm, stable environment. Do not feed into the fantasy or give it too much attention. Sometimes that can make it worse." We thanked her and took Emma home. It was nearly dawn by the time we got back to the house. I did not want to go back inside, but where else could we go? We could not afford a hotel indefinitely, and I had work on Monday. We had to face this. The house felt different when we walked in. Colder, darker. Even though the sun was starting to rise outside, the interior of the house seemed to resist the light. Emma went straight to her room without being told. Rachel and I stood in the kitchen, exhausted and scared. "I do not know what to do," Rachel admitted. "Part of me thinks this is all just Emma's imagination, running wild. Maybe some kind of behavioral issue we need to address. But another part of me..." She trailed off. "Another part of me is terrified." I finished for her. She nodded. "Yes, terrified. Before you continue reading, I want to ask you something. If you are enjoying this story, if it is keeping you on the edge of your seat, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. It really helps me continue creating content like this. And if you have ever experienced something similar, something unexplainable, involving a child or an imaginary friend, please share your story in the comments. I would love to hear about it. Now, let us continue. Over the next few days, things seemed to calm down slightly. Emma still talked about the Hollow Man, but less frequently. She seemed more like her normal self, playing with her toys, watching her cartoons, acting like a typical 4-year-old. Rachel and I tried to maintain normalcy, but there was an underlying tension in the house that neither of us could ignore. We had an appointment scheduled with a child psychologist for the following week. In the meantime, we tried to follow the nurse's advice and not give too much attention to Emma's imaginary friend. But I could not stop noticing things, small things that should not have been possible. Pictures hanging on the walls would be slightly crooked when I knew they had been straight before. The temperature in Emma's room was always at least 10 degrees colder than the rest of the house, even though the heating system was working perfectly. I would sometimes catch movement in my peripheral vision, a tall, thin shadow that vanished the moment I turned to look at it directly, and the whispering. At night, when the house was quiet, I could sometimes hear it again. That low, constant susurrus of many voices speaking at once. Rachel noticed things too, though she tried to rationalize them. She would forget where she had put things, only to find them in strange places. She would wake up in the middle of the night feeling like someone was watching her. She started having nightmares, terrible dreams that she could not quite remember when she woke, but that left her feeling anxious and disturbed. We were both on edge, jumping at shadows, becoming increasingly paranoid. And Emma kept watching us with those knowing eyes, as if she could see something we could not. One evening, About a week after our trip to the emergency room, I was doing dishes when I heard Emma call out from the living room. "Daddy, come look at this." I dried my hands and went to see what she wanted. She was sitting on the floor with a photo album open in front of her. It was an old album that contained pictures from my childhood. I had not looked at it in years. "Look, Daddy," Emma said, pointing to a particular photograph. "The Hollow Man is in this picture." I knelt down beside her and looked. It was a photo of me as a child, maybe 7 or 8 years old, standing in front of our old house. My father was next to me, his hand on my shoulder. We were both smiling, and in the background, barely visible in the shadows of the porch, there was something, a tall, thin figure, dark and indistinct, like a shadow that did not quite match the lighting in the rest of the photo. I picked up the album and held the photo closer, my hands shaking. I had seen this picture dozens of times over the years. I had never noticed that figure before. Never. "He has always been there, Daddy," Emma said softly. "He follows your family. He told me so. He has been watching for generations. He was there when your daddy died. He was there when your daddy's daddy died. He will be there when you die too." I dropped the album. "Emma, stop it. Stop saying things like that." She looked up at me with sad eyes. "I am sorry, Daddy. I know it scares you. But he wants you to know. He wants you to understand. He is not trying to hurt us. He just is. He exists. And he is drawn to sadness and fear and death. It is his nature. He cannot change what he is." I picked up the album and closed it, putting it back on the shelf with trembling hands. "Where is your mother?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "She is upstairs taking a bath," Emma said. I nodded and walked away, needing to put distance between myself and that photograph, between myself and the impossible figure that should not have been there. I found myself standing in the hallway, staring at the stairs leading up to the second floor. I could hear the sound of water running from the bathroom, the normal, everyday sound of my wife taking a bath. But the house felt wrong. The air felt thick and oppressive. I felt like I was being watched from every shadow, every dark corner. I was losing my mind. That was the only rational explanation. The stress of the situation, the lack of sleep, the constant anxiety. It was all making me see things that were not there. But even as I tried to convince myself of that, I knew it was not true. Something was happening, something real and terrible and beyond my understanding. That night, I could not sleep. I lay in bed next to Rachel, listening to her breathe, and all I could think about was that figure in the photograph, the Hollow Man. If he had been following my family for generations, what did that mean? Why us? What did he want? And more importantly, how could I protect my family from something I could not see, could not touch, could barely comprehend? Around 4:30 inches the morning, I heard Emma's door open. I immediately got out of bed and went into the hallway. Emma was standing outside her room, but she was not alone. The air around her seemed darker, denser, as if reality itself was bending around an invisible presence. "Emma, go back to bed," I said, trying to sound calm. She turned to look at me, and in the dim light of the hallway, I could see her eyes were completely black again. "He wants to show you something, Daddy. Something important. He says you need to understand what he is before you can understand what is coming." I wanted to grab her and pull her away, but I found myself frozen, unable to move. The temperature in the hallway had dropped so dramatically that I could see my breath forming clouds in the air. And then I saw it. Really saw it. For just a moment, the thing that Emma called the Hollow Man became visible. It was tall, impossibly tall, at least 8 feet, with a body so thin it seemed like it was made of shadows stretched to their breaking point. It had the vague shape of a man, with limbs that were too long, joints that bent at wrong angles, and where its head should have been, there was nothing. Just a smooth, empty void, darker than the darkness around it. But despite having no face, no eyes, I could feel it looking at me. I could feel its attention, cold and alien and utterly inhuman, focused entirely on me. And in that moment, I understood. Emma had been right. This thing had been following my family. It had been there when my father died. It had been there before that, watching, waiting, drawn to the pain and fear and grief that seemed to follow my bloodline like a curse. The moment stretched on, feeling like an eternity, and then it was gone. The darkness receded, the temperature rose, and Emma blinked, her eyes returning to normal. She looked confused, like she had just woken from a dream. "Daddy? Why are we in the hallway?" she asked in her normal little girl voice. I rushed forward and scooped her up in my arms, holding her tight. "It is okay, baby. Let us get you back to bed." I carried her back to her room, tucked her in, and sat beside her until she fell asleep. But I could not stop shaking. I could not stop thinking about what I had seen. It was real. The Hollow Man was real. When morning came, I told Rachel everything. I expected her to think I was crazy, to insist we both needed help, but instead, she just nodded slowly. "I saw him too," she whispered. "Last night, when I woke up to use the bathroom. He was standing at the end of our bed, just watching us. I thought I was dreaming, so I closed my eyes and went back to sleep. But it was not a dream, was it?" I shook my head. It was not a dream. We sat together in the kitchen, drinking coffee, trying to figure out what to do next. We were both terrified, exhausted, and completely out of our depth. "We need to move," Rachel said finally. "We need to get out of this house and never come back." I wanted to agree, but something Emma had said kept echoing in my mind. "He follows your family. He goes where we go." "I do not think moving will help," I said quietly. "If what Emma says is true, if this thing has been following my family for generations, then it does not matter where we live. It will find us." Rachel put her face in her hands. "Then what do we do, Daniel? How do we fight something like this?" I had no answer for her. How do you fight a shadow? How do you protect your family from something that exists outside the normal rules of reality? The appointment with the child psychologist was scheduled for that afternoon. We decided to keep it, not because we thought it would solve the problem, but because we needed someone, anyone, to talk to about what was happening. Dr. Patricia Morrison was in her late 50s, with kind eyes and a calm demeanor. Her office was warm and inviting, filled with toys and books designed to put children at ease. Emma seemed to like her immediately. For the first hour, Dr. Morrison talked with Emma alone while Rachel and I waited outside. When she finally called us in, her expression was troubled. "Emma is a very bright, articulate child," Dr. Morrison began. "She has a vivid imagination and a sophisticated understanding of complex emotional concepts for her age. However, I am concerned about the nature of her attachment to this imaginary friend. The things she describes, the level of detail, the consistency of her narrative. It is quite unusual. Imaginary friends typically serve as sources of comfort for children, helping them process emotions or deal with loneliness. But the Hollow Man, as Emma describes him, is not comforting. He is disturbing. He tells her things that frighten her, shows her things that upset her, yet she feels compelled to maintain contact with him." I leaned forward. "Doctor, has Emma told you anything specific? Anything that seemed impossible for her to know?" Dr. Morrison hesitated. "She told me about several deaths, specific details about accidents and tragedies in your family history. I have to ask, have you discussed these events with her in detail?" "We have never talked about Daniel's father's death or any other family tragedies in her presence." Dr. Morrison nodded slowly. "Then I am at a loss to explain how she knows what she knows. She described your father's accident with details that would only be available in police reports or newspaper articles. She knew about your grandfather's death from a stroke, including the fact that it happened in his workshop while he was alone. She even mentioned a great-uncle I found no record of in any online database." The room seemed to tilt around me. "What great-uncle?" "Doctor." Morrison checked her notes. "She said your great-uncle Thomas died in 1952 inches a house fire. She said the Hollow Man was there, watching. She described it in quite disturbing detail for a 4-year-old. I felt the blood drain from my face. I do not know anything about a great-uncle Thomas. My family never mentioned him." Dr. Morrison looked at us with genuine concern. "I am going to be honest with you. In my 27 years of practice, I have never encountered a case quite like this. Emma is not displaying symptoms of any psychological disorder I am familiar with. She is not delusional, not dissociating in the clinical sense. She is lucid, rational, and genuinely seems to believe she is communicating with this entity, and the information she has access to defies normal explanation. Rachel grabbed my hand. Are you saying you believe her? You believe the Hollow Man is real? Doctor, Morrison chose her words carefully. I am saying that I cannot explain what is happening through conventional psychology. There are documented cases throughout history of children who claim to have contact with entities or spirits. Most can be explained through natural means, but some cannot. If you are experiencing phenomena in your home that correlate with what Emma is describing, then you may be dealing with something beyond my expertise. She paused. Have you considered consulting with someone who specializes in paranormal activity? I almost laughed. A week ago, I would have dismissed such a suggestion as ridiculous, but now, after everything I had seen, it seemed like the only logical next step. Do you know anyone? I asked. Doctor, Morrison nodded. I have a colleague, Dr. Raymond Hayes. He is a professor of religious studies at the university, but his personal research focuses on unexplained phenomena and historical accounts of supernatural encounters. He approaches these things from an academic perspective, not as a ghost hunter or medium. He might be able to provide some insight, or at least some historical context for what you are experiencing. She wrote down a phone number and handed it to me. Tell him I referred you. He is a good man, and he takes these matters seriously. We thanked Dr. Morrison and left her office with more questions than answers. On the drive home, Emma was quiet in the back seat. Did Dr. Morrison help? She finally asked. I hope so, sweetie, Rachel said. We are trying to understand what is happening so we can help you. Emma was quiet for a moment. The Hollow Man is not trying to hurt me, Mommy. He is just lonely. He has been alone for so long. He says he cannot remember when he started existing. He just was, one day, and he has been watching ever since, watching people live and die. He says it is all he knows how to do. The sadness in her voice broke my heart. When we got home, I immediately called the number Dr. Morrison had given me. Dr. Hayes answered on the third ring. He had a deep, measured voice that immediately put me at ease. I explained the situation as clearly as I could, expecting him to think I was crazy. Instead, he listened quietly, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished, he was silent for a long moment. Mr. Daniel, he finally said, what you are describing fits a very specific pattern I have encountered in my research. The entity you call the Hollow Man sounds like what historical accounts refer to as a witness spirit or a watcher. These are beings that exist outside normal time and space, drawn to human suffering and death. They do not cause harm directly, but their presence itself can be deeply disturbing and psychologically damaging. So you believe me? I asked, almost afraid of the answer. I believe that you are experiencing something genuine and frightening, Dr. Hayes said. Whether we call it a spirit, an entity, a manifestation of collective unconscious, or something else entirely, the label matters less than the effect it is having on your family. These watchers, if that is what this is, are attracted to specific bloodlines. They form attachments that can last generations. The fact that your daughter can communicate with it is unusual but not unprecedented. Some children are more sensitive to these presences. I felt a mixture of relief and terror. Relief that someone believed me, that I was not going crazy. Terror at the confirmation that this thing was real and had been following my family for who knows how long. How do we make it stop? I asked. How do we protect our daughter? Dr. Hayes sighed. That is the difficult question. These entities cannot be exorcised or banished in the traditional sense because they are not demonic in nature. They are not evil, just profoundly alien. However, the attachment can be weakened or broken. I would need to visit your home, assess the situation directly, and then we can discuss possible approaches. Would you be comfortable with that? I looked at Rachel, who had been listening to my side of the conversation. She nodded. Yes, I said. Please. As soon as possible. Dr. Hayes agreed to come to our house the following evening. When I hung up, I felt a small glimmer of hope for the first time in weeks. Maybe this man could help us. Maybe there was a way out of this nightmare. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about what Dr. Hayes had said. A witness spirit. A watcher. Something drawn to suffering and death. I thought about my family history, about the tragedies and losses we had endured over the generations. My father's accident, my grandfather's stroke, the great uncle I had never heard of who died in a fire. How many others had there been? How long had this thing been watching? At 3:47 inches the morning, I was lying awake when I heard Emma's door open again. I got up immediately and went into the hallway. Emma was standing outside her room, but this time she was crying. "Daddy, he is showing me something bad, something that is going to happen. I do not want to see it, but he keeps showing me." I knelt down and pulled her into my arms. "What is he showing you, baby?" She sobbed against my chest. "He is showing me Mommy in a hospital. She is sick. Very sick. He says it is already starting inside her. He says there is a bad thing growing, and the doctors will not find it until it is too late. He says you are going to be so sad, Daddy. He says I am going to lose my Mommy." My blood turned to ice. "Emma, that is not going to happen. Your Mommy is healthy. She is fine." But even as I said it, doubt crept in. Rachel had been complaining of feeling tired lately. She had attributed it to stress, to the lack of sleep we had both been experiencing. But what if it was something else? What if the Hollow Man was not just predicting the future, but revealing something that was already happening? I carried Emma back to her room and stayed with her until she fell asleep, but I could not shake the terrible fear that had taken root in my heart. The next morning, I convinced Rachel to schedule a doctor's appointment. She protested, saying she was fine, just tired and stressed, but I insisted. "Please," I said, "just get a checkup. For my peace of mind." She finally agreed, scheduling an appointment for later that week. Dr. Hayes arrived at our house at 7:00 inches the evening. He was a tall man in his mid-60s, with gray hair and sharp, intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He carried a worn leather bag and moved with the careful deliberation of someone who had seen things most people would not believe. Emma took to him immediately, which surprised me. She was usually shy around strangers. "Hello, Emma, Doctor," Hayes said, kneeling down to her level. "Your parents tell me you have a very special friend. Would you tell me about him?" Emma nodded. "His name is the Hollow Man. He has been watching my family for a very long time. He is here right now, actually. He is standing behind you." Dr. Hayes did not react with fear or surprise. He simply nodded. I thought I felt something when I walked in. The temperature dropped, and there is a pressure in the air, like before a storm. That is common when these entities are present. He stood and looked around the room, his gaze settling on the same corner of Emma's room that seemed to attract the presence. "May I look around your home? These watchers often leave traces, subtle signs of their presence that can help us understand the nature of the attachment." We gave him permission, and for the next hour, he walked through every room of the house, sometimes pausing to examine a particular spot, sometimes taking photographs with an old film camera. When he finished, we all sat down in the living room. Emma had gone to bed, though I doubted she was sleeping. "Doctor." Hayes opened his bag and pulled out a notebook filled with handwritten notes and sketches. "Your home has a significant presence," he began. "The entity your daughter calls the Hollow Man is indeed here, and it is powerful. More powerful than most watchers I have encountered. The attachment to your bloodline is old, very old. I would estimate at least 5 or 6 generations, possibly more. These beings form these attachments for reasons we do not fully understand. But once formed, they are extremely difficult to break." Rachel leaned forward. "Can you break it? Can you make it leave us alone?" Dr. Hayes looked at her with sympathy. "I can try, but you need to understand what that would entail. The entity is not here by choice, in the sense that you or I make choices. It is drawn here by something fundamental to its nature. To break the attachment, we would need to sever the thread that connects it to your family line. That is a delicate and potentially dangerous process. It requires confronting the entity directly, understanding what originally drew it to your ancestors, and then convincing it, or compelling it, to release its hold. I felt a surge of frustration. You are saying we have to negotiate with this thing? Reason with it? Dr. Hayes shook his head. Not negotiate. Exactly. But understand, these entities are not malicious, but they are also not benevolent. They exist in a gray space, drawn to the extremes of human emotion. The hollow man, as your daughter calls it, has been feeding on your family's grief and fear for generations. It has become dependent on that connection. To break it, we need to starve it. We need to remove its source of sustenance. Rachel and I exchanged glances. How do we do that? She asked. Dr. Hayes closed his notebook. By breaking the cycle of fear, these entities grow stronger when people are afraid of them, when they give them attention and power through their terror. The more you fear the hollow man, the more real and powerful it becomes. Conversely, if you can face it without fear, if you can acknowledge its presence without feeding it your emotional energy, it will weaken. Eventually, the attachment will fade. That sounded impossible. How could we not be afraid of something that had been haunting my family for generations? As if reading my thoughts, Dr. Hayes continued. I know it sounds difficult, and it is, but I have seen it work. The key is understanding that the hollow man is not evil. It is simply doing what it does, existing as it exists. It is like a shadow, something that appears in response to light but has no substance of its own. Your fear gives it substance. Your attention gives it form. Without that, it fades. He paused. There is something else you should know. Your daughter Emma is acting as a conduit between you and the entity. Her sensitivity allows her to perceive and communicate with it. That is both a blessing and a curse. A blessing because she can help us understand it. A curse because the connection is affecting her development and well-being. I felt a surge of protective anger. What do we do about that? How do we protect her? Dr. Hayes pulled out a small cloth bag from his leather case. This contains herbs and minerals that have been traditionally used to create barriers against spiritual presences: sage, salt, obsidian, and a few other elements. I want you to create a protective circle around Emma's bed with this mixture. It would not stop the entity completely, but it will create a buffer, a space where the connection is weakened. It might help her sleep better, give her some respite from the constant contact. He handed me the bag. Additionally, I want you to start keeping a journal. Document every encounter, every strange occurrence, every detail. Patterns often emerge that can help us understand what we are dealing with. We talked for another hour, and Dr. Hayes gave us specific instructions on things we could do to weaken the entity's presence. Small rituals and practices designed to reclaim our space and reduce our fear. When he finally left, I felt both hopeful and overwhelmed. Could we really break free of something that had been attached to my family for generations? That night, I created the protective circle around Emma's bed, exactly as Dr. Hayes had instructed. I did not know if it would work, but I was willing to try anything. Emma watched me with those knowing eyes. The hollow man does not like that, she said quietly. It makes him feel far away, fuzzy. He does not like it when he cannot see clearly. Good, I said firmly. You need your rest, and he needs to give you space. Emma nodded and climbed into bed. For the first time in weeks, she seemed to sleep peacefully through the night. But I could feel the presence in the house growing agitated. The temperature fluctuations became more extreme. Objects would move when nobody was looking. The whispering grew louder, more insistent. The hollow man was not happy about being pushed back. Over the next few days, Rachel went to her doctor's appointment. I tried not to think about what Emma had said, about what the hollow man had supposedly shown her, but I could not help the knot of anxiety in my stomach as I waited for Rachel to call with the results. When she finally did, her voice was shaking. Daniel, they found something. During the routine examination, they felt a mass. They are sending me for more tests, a biopsy. They said it could be nothing, but they want to be sure. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. Emma's prediction. The hollow man's vision. It was coming true. When? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Tomorrow. They are fitting me in as an emergency case because of the location and size of the mass. She paused. Daniel, I am scared. I wanted to tell her everything would be okay, that it was nothing, just a false alarm. But I could not get the words out. All I could think about was the hollow man, standing in the shadows, watching, waiting, drawn to the suffering that was unfolding. That night, I did not sleep at all. I sat in the living room, in the dark, and waited. At exactly 3:00 inches the morning, I felt the presence materialize in front of me. The temperature dropped so dramatically that frost formed on the windows. And there it was, the hollow man, fully visible for the first time, towering, impossibly thin, a living shadow with no face and limbs that seemed to stretch into infinity. I should have been terrified. A week ago, I would have been. But now, after everything, I just felt angry. Why? I asked out loud. Why my family? What did we ever do to deserve this? The entity did not speak, not in words I could hear. But suddenly, images flooded my mind. I saw my great-great-grandfather, a man I had never known, standing at the edge of a cliff, consumed by grief after losing his young son to illness. I saw him call out in his despair, begging for someone, anyone, to witness his pain, to acknowledge his suffering. And something had answered. The hollow man. It had come, drawn by that raw, overwhelming emotion, and it had stayed, generation after generation, following the bloodline, drawn to each new tragedy, each new source of grief and fear. It was not malicious. It was just doing what it had been called to do all those years ago. Witnessing, watching, being present in the moments of deepest suffering. But that first act of desperation, that call for a witness to pain, had created a bond that had never been broken. My ancestor called you, I said, understanding dawning. He invited you in, and you never left. The presence seemed to pulse, confirming my words. I stood up, facing the entity directly. But I am breaking that bond, right now. I do not want you here anymore. My family does not need a witness to our suffering. We will face whatever comes together, without you. I am not afraid of you anymore. I understand what you are, and I am telling you to leave. The invitation is revoked. For a long moment, nothing happened. The entity remained, its eyeless gaze fixed on me. Then, slowly, it began to fade. Not all at once, but gradually, like smoke dissipating in the wind. The temperature began to rise. The oppressive feeling that had filled the house for weeks started to lift, and I heard for the first and only time the voice of the hollow man. It was not malevolent or threatening. It was sad, infinitely sad, the sound of something that had existed for far too long and was finally being released. Thank you, it seemed to whisper, though whether it was thanking me for freeing it or for the years of pain it had witnessed, I could not tell. By morning, the presence was gone. I could feel the difference immediately. The house felt lighter, warmer, more like a home than it had in weeks. When Emma woke up, the first thing she said was, "Daddy, the hollow man is gone." He said goodbye. He said he was tired and wanted to rest. Did you talk to him? I hugged her tightly. Yes, baby, I talked to him, and he is not coming back. He is finally at peace. Emma smiled, and it was her real smile, the bright, innocent smile of a 4-year-old who should never have had to deal with the things she had dealt with. I am glad, she said. I liked him because he was lonely, but he made me sad. I am glad he is not lonely anymore. Rachel's biopsy results came back 3 days later. The mass was benign, a fibroid tumor that was easily treatable with medication and monitoring. She would be fine. The doctor said she was lucky they had caught it early, before it could cause any real problems. When Rachel told me the news, I felt a wave of relief so powerful it brought me to my knees. Emma had been right about the mass, but wrong about the outcome. Or maybe, without the hollow man's presence, without the weight of that ancient grief pressing down on us, the future had changed. Maybe we had broken free of the pattern of tragedy that had followed my family for so long. Dr. Hayes visited us one more time, a week later, to check on how we were doing. When I told him what had happened, how I had confronted the entity and revoked the invitation, he smiled. "You did what very few people are able to do," he said. "You faced your fear directly and took back control. The entity was bound by the rules of its own existence. It could only stay where it was invited, where it was fed by fear and attention. By refusing to be afraid, by understanding its nature and asking it to leave, you severed the attachment." He paused. "Your family is free now. The pattern is broken. Your daughter will grow up without that shadow hanging over her. As I am recording this now, 6 months later, I can confirm that our lives have returned to normal. Emma no longer talks about the Hollow Man. She has new imaginary friends now, normal ones, with cheerful names and silly personalities. Rachel is healthy and happy. The house feels like a home again. But I have not forgotten what we experienced. I keep the journal Dr. Hayes told me to maintain, and I have written down everything, every detail, so that if anyone else in my family ever experiences something similar, they will know what to do. They will know that these things exist, that they can be faced, and that fear is only as powerful as we allow it to be. I have also done something else. I researched my family history, going back as far as records would allow. I found the story of my great-great-grandfather, the man who lost his son and called out in his grief. I found the date he died, and it was noted that in his final days, he spoke of a dark figure that followed him everywhere, a presence that never left him alone. He died in a state institution, diagnosed with melancholia and delusions. But they were not delusions. The Hollow Man had been there, just as he had been there for every generation since. I have also found references to other families, other bloodlines, that have their own watchers, their own witnesses. These entities exist in the spaces between our understanding, drawn to the extremes of human emotion. They are not ghosts of the dead, but something else entirely, something older and stranger, and most people never even know they are there, living their entire lives with a shadow following them, never quite visible, always watching. If you have made it this far in my story, thank you for listening. If you believe me, if you think you might have experienced something similar, please share this video. Please leave a comment below. And if you feel like there is something watching you, something you can almost see in the corner of your eye, remember what I learned. These things only have the power we give them. Face them, understand them, and most importantly, do not be afraid. Fear is what feeds them. Love, courage, and understanding are what sets us free. Before I end this, I want to ask one more thing. If this story resonated with you, if it gave you chills or made you think about the unexplained things in your own life, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Share your own stories in the comments. I read every single one, and your experiences matter. Together, we can shed light on these dark corners and help others who might be going through similar things. Thank you for watching, and remember, you are stronger than any shadow. You are stronger than any fear, and you are never truly alone in facing the unknown. Emma is 8 years old now, thriving in school, happy and well-adjusted. When I asked her recently if she remembered the Hollow Man, she thought for a moment and said, "I remember he was sad. Daddy, I am glad we helped him find peace." Out of the mouths of children comes wisdom we adults often forget. The Hollow Man was not a monster. He was a tragic figure, bound by an ancient call to witness suffering, unable to break free until someone finally understood and released him. In helping him find peace, we found our own. I still think about him sometimes, late at night when the house is quiet. I wonder where he is now, if entities like him can truly rest, or if they simply move on to other places, other families, other cycles of grief. But I do not fear him anymore. I feel something closer to sympathy, even gratitude. He was part of our story, part of the journey that brought my family closer together and taught us the true nature of courage. And that is a gift, however strangely it was delivered. If you are dealing with something unexplainable, something that terrifies you in the night, remember this. Understanding is more powerful than fear. Compassion is more powerful than hate. And sometimes, the things we are most afraid of are just as lost and scared as we are. Face them with courage, with an open heart, and with the determination to break free from whatever cycles of fear have been holding you back. You have that power. You always have. This is Daniel, signing off. Thank you for listening to my story. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and never stop questioning the shadows. Sometimes they have stories to tell, and sometimes those stories can set us all free.